Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to our live broadcast, evening Dhamma session. So last night we started talking about mindfulness. Intent was to answer the question of what is wrong mindfulness, but I ended up spending all the time talking about what is mindfulness. So tonight, briefly, talk about how mindfulness goes wrong. I mean, it should be quite interesting as meditators to know how the practice can go wrong. Well, the first thing I think to note is that mindfulness is never wrong. Mindfulness is a sobhana cetasika. Saddha, sobhana, I can't remember the word, but it's a beautiful quality of mind. Mindfulness is common to all wholesome states, I think. Yeah. So mindfulness itself can never be wrong, and it's always useful. So when we talk about wrong mindfulness, we're not actually talking about mindfulness being wrong. We're talking more about the practice of mindfulness going wrong. But furthermore, the practice of mindfulness, it is quite difficult for it to go wrong. And I want to stress that because with other types of meditation, it actually is quite easy for it to go wrong. I'll talk a little bit about that. Maybe I'll wait and talk during the talk about that. But mindfulness is so simple, right? The first thing, it's difficult to misunderstand the instruction. It's difficult to be in doubt about what is being asked. And it's difficult to apply mindfulness, and well, it's really impossible to apply mindfulness and go too far, right? With other types of meditation, you have to be careful. If you go too far, you can get out of your depths. But with mindfulness, you don't really ever get out of your depths. It can seem overwhelming, but it's in a different way. The overwhelming nature of it is real, right? It's just your own mind. Whereas other types of meditation, you can get lost. Because it's conceptual. We'll talk about that. The first way mindfulness can go wrong, let's bring this up, is, I'll spell them out. The four ways mindfulness can go wrong is 1, unmindfulness; 2, misdirected mindfulness; 3, lapsed mindfulness; and 4, impotent or ineffectual mindfulness. Impotent might be the best word. Let's see if I can get to this again. So, unmindfulness is, of course, the opposite of what we talked about last night, right? If we just go through the four qualities of mindfulness, the lakkhana chatuka, and we reverse them, we could say unmindfulness. What is it like? There's the wobbling. It has the characteristic of wobbling, pilapana lakkhana. So, when you practice meditation and you let your mind, if you're not mindful, your mind flits from object to object. And so this is a way, when we talk about wrong mindfulness, the worst type of mindfulness is if you're not mindful. If you just do walking and sitting maybe for hours a day without actually applying the mind to the object. So samosa rasa, it has forgetfulness. It forgets itself. How you know you're practicing incorrectly is you've forgotten your experiences. Your mind is not connected with the present moment. Instead, it's caught up in judging and planning and wishing and so on. It's caught up in its own perceptions of things rather than the actual experience of them. So, and I mean, you'll experience this throughout the course, of course, and this is what you have to watch out for. You know you're going wrong when you realize you've gotten lost in judging something or worrying or stressing or any number of emotions, any number of distractions, when you get caught up in fantasy and so on. Forget yourself. Manifests itself as... Oh, I missed one, but yeah. It manifests itself as not guarding, right? Being unguarded. So you see things and you want them, or you're upset by them, and you hear sounds and you're annoyed by them, or you're enamored of them. Smells and tastes. When you eat your food and you just enjoy it so much, or you eat your food and it's unpleasant. You're letting your mind go. Sometimes you experience something and it gets you lost because you weren't guarded. And you don't confront. Remember, the other manifestation, it manifests itself as confronting. So unmindfulness is when you don't confront, when you run away from it. And the proximate cause is atirasanya. I didn't go through this with you guys last night, did I? Remember this? Did I talk about this last night? Because I've been rehearsing it. It sounds so... No, this is new, huh? Good. I was rehearsing it in my room as well. Just want to make sure this is new stuff, huh? So atirasanya, which means when you have perception and it's not firm, right? So this is, you experience something, and mindfulness doesn't arise when you allow your mind to react to it. So you experience pain, for example. There's the pain, and that's the sanya, but then instead of reaffirming that, instead of staying with the experience, you get lost. I don't like the pain, and so on. So this is the cause of not being mindful, is when you fail to grasp the experience, make it firm, make it strong. Your mind is not strong, basically. Right. So that's the first way mindfulness can go wrong. The second way, misdirected mindfulness. And so this is one that I've sort of, well, I mean, it's something that isn't really wrong, but it's problematic in the sense that if mindfulness is directed at the wrong object, it's not dangerous, but it's not fruitful either, or it's not fruitful in an ultimate sense. So, for example, mindfulness of the past. Well, you can remember everything that happened in your life. If you practice meditation and enter into states of extreme tranquility, you can become very mindful of your whole past, all the way back to the moment when you were born. Fairly easy, in fact. It's quite remarkable if you practice those practices. You'll get to the point where you can remember all the way back. Your memory clears up because you strengthen your reality. And then even you can break through conception and go back and remember past lives. But that's misdirected, right? It's misdirected in the sense that won't make you enlightened. And while that is an interesting and quite powerful practice in itself, general mindfulness of the past isn't going to help you at all. Your ability to remember things that happened long ago, which is a type of mind, what we call sati. What it means is when you have a very strong mind, but it's not directed at the present. And the same with the future. But the more common one that's often misunderstood as being proper mindfulness is mindfulness of concepts. So I talk a lot about concepts and how they're different from ultimate reality, and this is important because if you're mindful of concepts, for example, if you say wish for all beings to be happy, that's a kind of a mindfulness. Or if you think about the parts of the body, hair, nails, teeth, flesh, skin, you repeat this to yourself, skin. Well, skin isn't real. It's an idea that you get based on your experiences of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. But the skin itself is just a concept. And the thing is, if you focus on that, well, skin is as a concept is permanent. It's constant. It's always there. It's not inconstant in the same way experiences are. Experiences that arise and cease moment after moment. And so, if your mindfulness is not focused on the present reality, you won't experience and you won't come to understand impermanence, suffering, and non-self. You won't let go, right? Concepts are something that we cling to. Even tranquility meditation, all kinds of good meditations. But if your mindfulness, if your strength of mind is focused on concepts, you'll never come to let go and become free. So that's the second type of wrong mindfulness. The third way mindfulness can be seen as wrong is when it lapses, and you might argue this is a lot like unmindfulness, but it only occurs for people who practice correctly. When you practice properly, because mindfulness practice calms the mind down and focuses the mind quite powerfully. You'll often experience positive states of bliss and joy. There was one person who asked a question a couple of nights ago about their experience of great joy. And I've given talks on this before, what the meditation is not, and talking about the various ways we get stuck in the meditation. So there are good things that come, byproducts of mindfulness practice, like you'll see bright lights sometimes, or you'll see images in the mind, and then you get distracted by them, or you feel very calm and you become complacent and settled in the calm, and you stop being mindful. This is actually an important part of the teaching of the meditation practice, is to get meditators to be mindful of the good things that they get from meditation. You might feel happy. You might gain great knowledge and wisdom, sort of understanding about problems that you have in your life and so on. You may gain great energy and effort, or you might just become enamored with the mindfulness. Mindfulness itself can become a hindrance, because once you get very mindful, you become complacent, you become proud and confident in yourself. Hey, look at how mindful I am. And when you do that, you're not mindful anymore. And so you can sit there for a long time thinking, God, I'm so good at this, or wow, I really, this practice is great. And confidence is another one. You become very confident in your teacher, in the teaching, in your own practice. You want to become a monk or a nun. You want to leave home. You want to go home and tell everyone about the practice. Great confidence comes, and that's a good thing, but you get lost with it. So good things you have to be mindful of. These are called the vipassanupa kilesa. They're defilements of insight, because they're not evil or bad, but they're not perfect either. They impede your progress. They hinder it. So you could say that's the way that mindfulness practice goes bad. But it generally just gets people stalled. If they don't have a teacher, it's common to be stuck in these states for quite a long time. But with a good teacher, it's not that problematic. And the fourth and final way, which I think is really the most proper way we can talk about wrong mindfulness, I think it's really how the Buddha talked about miccha sati, wrong mindfulness. Wrong mindfulness, because as I said, mindfulness itself can't be wrong, is impotent. Wrong, any of the Eightfold Paths that are wrong, they're wrong because they're not accompanied by the other seven the other seven path factors. So in Buddhism we talk about the Eightfold Noble Path. Well, you need all 8 factors working in tandem. If you have mindfulness but wrong view, meditators who come here and have strong belief in God, or a God, their God, or other religious views, strong belief in a self. I had one person who believed in a God self, whatever that is. So there's all kinds. And this person actually did the whole course. And he got to the end and he said, I think I got the experience that you wanted me to get. I said, oh, how do you know? And he said, because my God self told me. And immediately I knew he hadn't gotten anything out of it, because something was really wrong. Which goes to show you can really be practicing, apparently be practicing mindfulness, but without right view, the intent to practice isn't enough. You can have wrong intention, if you're angry, bitter person, the mindfulness practice isn't going to work. It's going to be ineffectual. If you're a greedy, addicted person, mindfulness isn't really going to work. I think if you don't actually address these, if you encourage them, if you are okay with being angry and greedy and deluded, and you encourage those states, if you have wrong speech, if you're always saying bad things about people, or yelling or hurting other people with a speech, or if you're lying is the worst. If you're a liar, very difficult to to progress in meditation practice. If you have wrong action, killing, stealing, cheating, if you're taking drugs and alcohol, not going to happen, right? Let's get stoned and practice mindfulness meditation, right? People ask if whether drugs could be a part of meditative practice. Some meditations, sure, not mindfulness. Wrong effort, right? If you're working too hard, it's very hard to be mindful. Wrong concentration, if you're unfocused or if you're focused on the wrong things. So the other 7 path factors are I missed livelihood. Right after action is wrong livelihood, but that's basically wrong action and wrong speech. But if any of these are missing, then mindfulness won't be effective. And that's the Buddha said, that's how you understand right mindfulness. Right, the Eightfold Path factors are all right because they're accompanied by the other 7. So the right way is when all 8 come together. Meaning it's more than just mindfulness. You need to have right view. I mean, basically you need to understand body and mind. You have to understand that reality is made up of experiences. It's not made up of things. This room doesn't actually exist. This room is a part of our perception. It's an extrapolation of our experiences. And so on. So, that was still a lot of information to fit in what has to eventually become a 20-minute talk. But I'll just keep working on it. I think that's interesting, very useful for all of us, of course, to talk about and think about these things. So I hope that was useful, interesting. Thank you all for coming out. That's the Dhamma for tonight. Let's see if there's any questions. Why is suffering considered negative? Well, because it's considered negative. If you didn't suffer from it, it wouldn't be called suffering. You admit by that question that there is the potential for someone to consider something negative. Well, it's the considering something negative that makes it suffering. If you let go of that consideration, it would no longer be suffering. Does the meditation center you started in Sri Lanka still exist? Go there and be taught meditation? Yes, I'm pretty sure you could be. You might want to go to Mitrigala instead, but the place I was at is actually, I think, doing quite well. And there are Sri Lankan monks and foreign monks there. We built a big two-story, 4-room building. Really good rooms. And there's 2 caves and so on. Big problem there, of course, is that it's a dengue-infested area, and you're more than likely to get dengue by going there. Unfortunately, it's a hotbed. I have to slow my actions to be aware of the intentions as well as the actual act. Should I just go about my day at my normal pace or keep doing things slower? Either way, if you're in a meditation center, you can certainly go slower. But you shouldn't have to go that slow. I mean, the mind is quite quick. If you're having to slow down, then maybe there's something you're missing. Something that's keeping you from being a little bit quicker about it. But certainly slow down a little bit. I'm aware that there's no coincidence. If there's no coincidence, then nothing has been linked. Oh, the talks coincide with my own practice. That's interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really have an answer for that question. Does the act of being mindful include recognizing the beginning stages of a sense-induced fabrication and not allowing it to proliferate? Yes. Yes. I mean, you might want to... I've talked a lot about mindfulness. In fact, last night I talked quite a bit about mindfulness. But it's fairly close to what you're saying, I think. Are you saying that all meditation on concepts is wrong mindfulness? It's not wrong mindfulness. The Buddha wouldn't have called it that. But if you're practicing to become enlightened, meditating on concepts is wrong in the sense that you're not going to become enlightened based on it. So it could be considered technically wrong. Yeah. In fact, I think that's quite valid. It's not wrong in a general sense, but in the context of becoming enlightened, it's wrong. But it's not wrong to practice tranquility if your goal is tranquility. But if you practice tranquility thinking it's going to bring insight, then you're wrong. What is the difference between tira sanya and sanya like cat, dog, cat, tree, etc.? Well, this is where sanya is used in a difference. There's at least two meanings of the word. I mean, sanya of a dog, of a cat, of a tree is just one kind of perception when you perceive the concept of dog or cat or so on. I mean, that doesn't work because that is perception of a concept, and if you reaffirm that, so your misunderstanding is sanya is what comes before mindfulness, but tira sanya, when you affirm that, that's how mindfulness exists. So if you say dog, 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 that's tira sanya, and it leads to sati. But it's wrong, for us because it's a concept. If you say seeing, that's tira sanya, and it leads to mindfulness. but it's right because the object is reality. Thoughts on self-aware synthetic mind. No, not... Well, it's not real. I mean, a synthetic mind, we're fooling ourselves. You can't create a mind like that. It's like, if you look at the history of computers, you see that all we're doing is just making it smaller and smaller. We're not actually adding mind to the mix. You can't just make something more complex and say, poof, it's God, right? You started out with rocks, It doesn't at some point of complexity become mind. It's just more complex body, physical. How to know what to attend to and be mindful of during meditation. Whatever's clearest, just be mindful of that. It doesn't really matter. I think that's addressed in my frequently asked questions, which is linked at the top. So you might want to read that. Okay, and that's all the questions. Thank you all for coming. Have a good night.